All right, so I'm going to talk about the situation with Trump and the coup that happened in South America, right? And this go into the trade war. This is in Book of Revelation where you have 10 nations rising and 7 kingdoms, right? Now, before I start talking about my opinion, I just want y'all to know that I am not a psychic. I'm not a reader. I'm not a prophet, okay? This is based on my intuitions, my feelings, and me knowing politics and, you know, putting pieces together like a puzzle, right? Okay, going forward. Um, I think Trump wants to take over South America, okay? Here why. When he's elected office, he has Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, and I'm assuming Marco Rubio speaks Spanish fluently. I'm assuming that, right? I know he's from Cuba. Another thing he did was I want to say this about Trump. Trump talk too much. He's talk too much. I just want to say that. I'm listening to the press. He said we're gonna come and take over Venezuela, and we're gonna use their oil and everything, and we're gonna free the people. Why you gotta say that? Why you gotta say you're gonna take their oil? Like, come on, Trump. He talk too much. He be letting people know what his plans is. He's like a loose cannon. Anyway, okay, here's the thing. You got Marco Rubio who deals with foreign exchange. He speaks Spanish fluently, right? And then you gave US taxpayer dollars to Argentina, right? Now you just took the president of Maduro out his country, Venezuela. This is how I feel about this. Y'all all know, if y'all follow my channel, y'all know my family's from Guyana, okay? Deep in my heart, I feel good that they took that dictator out of Venezuela. Hear me out, right? I feel good they took that dictator out of Venezuela, right? Because he was threatening to take over Guyana. He said he wants 2/3 of Guyana, but you know how dictators are. They want the whole country. They will say they want a piece of this country, but really, they try to take over the other countries, and any country that's near it, they're gonna keep taking over land. That's the way dictators think, right? What America did was wrong. They shouldn't have did what they did. They were wrong. But in my heart of heart, I'm happy they took that dictator out because he was gonna try to take over Guyana. That's why I'm happy, and I'm being straight up. I'm being straight up, right? Okay, so they are fighting for resources, as we see. Not it's just oil. It's they need the minerals to make the robots and the AI and the technology. They're fighting for that. Okay? And the oil too, but really it's the minerals. And South America's rich with minerals. Okay? And not only that, South America is like in our backyard. It's in our backyard. Okay? So this goes into the Bible prophecies. Like I said, you can't. I think I'm just making a number out my head. I'm assuming it's like 186 countries around the world, or maybe 100 or over that, right? So we have to, for the 10 nations to rise and the 7 kingdoms to rise. You gotta join country as one, okay? And I remember I was listening. I wish I had the name of that British psychic. He was saying that it's best to unite all the English speaking countries. Okay, Israel speak English, Canada speak English, British speak English, of course, America speak English. Who else? India, their population speak English. South Africa speak English. And India and South Africa is part of the BRICS, right? And I'm sure they're getting pressure from both sides. Russia and China is pressuring India, so is America and England pressuring India and say, y'all gotta choose. You can't be with England and you can't be with America. Y'all gotta make a choice. I'm sure they're putting pressure on the people of India, and I feel for them because they're in a tight situation because they're borders with China and Russia. So, they have to deal with this very delicately. You know what I mean? But honestly, if you, I never lived in a communist country in my life. I grew up in the United States, right? But the way I feel, the way a communist country is, they're gonna look out for all the dictators. They're gonna prefer to stick with dictator. India is not a dictator country. South Africa is not a dictator country. So is Brazil. Brazil is not a dictator country, but they don't speak English. They speak Portuguese, right? I don't know what they're gonna do with Brazil. I feel like he sent a message to the countries in the Caribbean and in South America. If y'all don't go with America want, y'all next. Okay? And he sent a message to Colombia too. And Mexico. The woman who's running Mexico, she's weak. I see her, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but there was a time I watched a video, and this guy was kissing her and kind of filling her up a little bit. Like, come on, So if a guy will do that to you, right? Not that she wanted that, but the guy was disrespectful. It just how they gonna respect a woman? You know what I mean? You dealing with China, you dealing with Russia, you dealing with people from the Middle East when women don't have rights. You dealing with like countries like Africa when females, India too. These countries is where women are very oppressed. So when you have a woman taking over, you think they're gonna have any respect for your country? They're not. They're not. If they see a woman running a country, these other countries that I just named, they're not gonna have respect. She gotta control these cartels that she got in her country to have respect for her, or he may want to take over Mexico, but I feel if he try to take over Mexico, it's because he don't want people coming in the United States who are not white. If you are not white, he doesn't want people coming to the United States. And I was listening to this guy. He's popular on YouTube. He exposed the situation um, with people from Somalia with the whole daycare scam. I don't know his name. I was just listening to one of his video, and he asked one of them, cause he could speak Spanish fluently, how they was able to get from Venezuela to the U.S. And she explained to them they go from Venezuela to Colombia to the Panama, to Honduras and Guatemala, Nicaragua, Mexico, right? Those places. So he wants to put he wants to put a stop of them migrating to the United States. I won't be surprised if he try to come after Colombia. I won't be surprised for real. You know? Um but if will he come after Brazil? I don't know. I don't think that would be a smart move for him to try to come after Brazil, you know? But I heard that Brazil was going to unite with Venezuela and Colombia because some of their people were killed when he bombed those ships. Okay? All right. So, what this has to do with the last days and Book of Revelation when I talk about the seven kingdoms and the 10 nations, if you listen to the other video, I explain what is the seven kingdoms and the seven nations, right? For us to compete with the BRICS, we need resources. And when you see Russia, India, Brazil, and other nations combine as one thing they have that we don't have is population, and they have the resources. So I know he insulted Canada and say Canada needs to be a governor state and we need to take over Canada. He wants Canada research, even though he say, oh, Canada don't really have anything they do. Or why will you, or he wanted Greenland. They're fighting for resources at the bottom line. They want the resources, and for them to compete with the global markets, they need the resources. So he's trying to get these resources for the people who invested in him in the election, which is the tech and AI and the people who in tech with technology, right? And that's what it is. So I see us. So what does have to do with Book of Revelation? Like I said, you can't have a whole bunch of countries. You have to have one America. So South America, Central America, and North America gotta unite as one country to be powerful, to take on the BRICS. Why not? Why can't we join France or Germany and you know the, the Finland, because you can't really trust them. Look, after the whole situation, like Russia turned off the gas to Europe, and then America invaded Venezuela, right? They turn off the gas. So, and then Germany is going back to Russia, kissing up. So it's like you can't really trust everybody in Europe, you know what I mean? And then you have, like he said, we need to stick with the people who speak English. You know what I mean? Because people who are colonized by British or America, we have a similar culture. I don't know how to explain. Yes, we all have, our nations are different, our culture is different, but just us knowing how to speak that English language, we have like somewhat of a similar attitude. How we respond, how we react by us speaking English fluently. We'll say things. I remember I was watching an African movie like Roots, like in slavery, and the African who was brought to the US as a slave was learning the English, and they say could and yes and maybe. He said, why you say that? Where I'm from, it's just a yes or a no. There's not a could, there's not a maybe or a possibility. You know what I mean? It's just yes or no. So that's what it is. I feel he's gonna come if he could stabilize Venezuela, and there's already resistance in Venezuela, but if he is able to stabilize Venezuela, they will come after Colombia next. Colombia's next. And I know China was ready to take over Taiwan too. China was ready to take over Taiwan too before they took that um Maduro out of Venezuela. So China may hesitate to invade Taiwan, but The whole situation with China, China has a population problem. Remember, there was a time they had a one child policy, and families they prefer to have boys. So if they had a girl, some of them took their lives. So they have a lot of men, they don't have a lot of females, and they have a population shortage when it comes to the labor force. So you're looking at maybe 3 or 4 generations of young people. And I heard by somebody, an expertise, I don't know what kind of expertise, they were saying in 20 years, if China does not fix this problem with its labor shortage, there cannot be the world power in manufacture. You know what I mean? Because there's a generation gap. You gotta say there's like 4 to 3 generation gap. People in their 40s, people in their 40s, people in their 30s, and their 20s, a gap because of they want child policy. These are working group. This is the age where the young people are working. So they have a gap of young people that they need to provide jobs for. So if they could take over Taiwan, that would help that situation with their gap that they have, you know. So China doesn't really have a choice but to try to take over Taiwan to meet the needs of their labor. That's one of the problems China have right now. You know, they have mostly men. They don't have enough females. They have mostly bachelors. They don't have enough females to help with their population. Even though they changed their policy, telling them they can have 3 kids if they want to, it's just the that policy that they allow. Some people don't want to have kids or a lot because it's costly. That's one. And also, they're like young. When they allow that policy and allow them to have 3 kids, they're still kids. You know, they need more time. They need people right now to fill their labor gap, basically. So, in terms of the Bible and the book of Revelation, when you have the 7 kingdoms, I know America's one of the 7 kingdoms, and Russia and China, Iran, they're one of the 10 nations. That's how I know. So we have to. It's just go back to biblical. America cannot compete with the BRICS by itself. They're gonna have to unite. They're gonna have to unite, and I feel England would unite with us, and Canada and Australia and Israel, like all the English speaking countries. I feel they will unite. They're not happy what's going on with Israel and Palestine. Who would be, you know? But we have to unite with the other countries to compete globally, and for America to still be dominant. You know, so that is what I want to say about this whole thing with America and Venezuela. And like I say, it's going to take an act of God to destroy the United States of economy. I think once we have that earthquake in California, America's done in terms of the economy, you know. All right, that's all I wanted to say about the whole thing. I feel he's going to try to take over South America. That is my opinion about it. I told you why. All right. All right. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.